So this is a really pivotal, important topic to talk about because every single one of us has unique gifts and talents. We have unique gifts and talents that only us does in a specific way, or speaks in a certain way, or shares a certain piece of truth. Now, to confidently do it, it's about having an awareness of what do you do with great ease.
Debz is a stressologist. She will stretch your mindset to think bigger than you've ever thought before, with follow-through techniques that are realistic and achievable to blow any fear out of your mind. Moira is a mindset cultivator. She will help you align your personal trinity of self-trust, inner awareness, and self-confidence so that you discover and share your unique gifts and purpose. Together, their goal with these conversations is to share how our inclinations do not always work in our best interest, and to provide the knowledge to leverage the gifts that already exist within each one of us. Their desire is to help you learn how to access the habits and behaviors that will lead to positive change and your best quality of life. Welcome to your deliciously motivated mindset.
Welcome, Moira.
Hello there.
Hi. And of course, our fabulous listeners, Moira.
Welcome, dear listeners.
Our divinely guided, insightful woman, and our listeners. Hello. Oh, today's a goodie.
But of course. I think we have to have that as a tagline somewhere. It's always a goodie. But of course.
But of course. Today is a goodie. When you said what it was, I was like, oh, and then you're like, and both get a little bit excited. But let's crack on, because I know what happens to us is we take these down. I'm going to say a rabbit hole that we don't even know is a rabbit hole. It becomes like a big tunnel. It's
I know.
like
I know.
A coal tunnel.
Where are we going to go today?
Yeah, the miners tunnel. So one of the things, if you've been a listener to us before or not, I'm Debz. I've got the New Zealand accent, and this is Moira.
And I'm Moira. I've got the softer Canadian/Scottish accent.
That's the one. I'm the one who snorts and she doesn't. That's what keeps us different, apart from our accents. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, one of the things we do is we rate ourselves. And when I say we rate ourselves on a scale of 0 to 10. And it's just a guidance to know where you are emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, just where you are.
Yeah. Where you are, what's going on, how are you feeling?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So 10 is absolutely chaos. Don't even know why you're listening to this crazy podcast. Somebody referred you to it. You got to listen to it. I don't even know what's happening. Is the internet going to work? What excuse have I got? I just my voice is annoying you. That's a 10. Okay.
That's a 10.
That's a 10. A 10. And then a 0 is, even just saying 0. Oh, just
I know. Doesn't it melt you? I just feel melted when I think of 0.
A 0 is just divine. It's where you don't have fear of the future, fear of the past. You're just sitting in a centered and present space that you just feel wrapped in a love blanket, I think.
Totally calm, peaceful, neutral and nurtured.
Yeah, that's it. And so the key of this is to start off this podcast with a rating. And as you're going through, we do have a break halfway through. And just at that moment, just check in with yourself and just see where you're feeling emotionally on a 0 to 10. And then also at the end, we're going to rate ourselves again and just see if it's moved in any way. It doesn't have to go up or down, but just see. And this is a great guidance to check in with who you are throughout the day when chaos happens and you go, oh, no wonder I was a 10 just before. No wonder this has happened to me. Right. It's just a little guidance of who you are.
And make sure it's a guidance. It's not to shame or beat you up or compare you or any of those kind of things. This is just a guidance.
It's just a check-in. Yeah. Just to be aware. Yeah. So in saying that, Moira, what number would you be here, right now?
Right here, right now, I'm going to put myself at a 1. I'm actually feeling really good, and I could say 0. But as always with these conversations, and like you were saying about tunnels, we go down in rabbit holes, and there's always a little bit of like, oh, what we're going to discover, and I want to stay present to that. So I'm putting myself at a 1. How about you?
I'm going to say I'm a 2.5. And that's because I've got this cough that's just come up. As soon as we go to hit record, I'm like, hang on, I've got a cough. Hang on, which is, there's clearly something I need to get off my chest and voice. So who knows what rabbit hole or miner's tunnel we're going down. So I'm going to say a 2.5. And we just write this down, and then at the end we check in. But when we have a little halftime pause, I encourage listeners to check in with your emotions and see what number you're at.
Yes.
So in saying that, here we go. Today's topic. Oh, they already know what the topic is because they would have seen it.
They do. But we'll still tell them.
Absolutely. How to confidently share your talents. And clearly speaking is one of mine. So this is an interesting one that's going to give you some tips and weave. And I thought, so how to confidently share your talents. Moira, kick this one off.
Kick this puppy off. So,
and I can't even say confidently.
Confidently.
Yeah.
I was just feeling into that, because I think that this is a really pivotal, important topic to talk about, because every single one of us has unique gifts and talents. We have unique gifts and talents that only us does in a specific way, or speaks in a certain way, or shares a certain piece of truth. Now, to confidently do it, it's about having an awareness of what do you do with great ease. But, and here's the caveat about it, is not to ever compare yourself with other people. Because let's say, for argument's sake, that you wanted to do public speaking, and maybe it's not your gift. But then you see somebody else whose gift it is to do public speaking. And then you shame yourself and say, I'm not sharing my gift, or I'm not sharing anything. Whereas maybe that conflict within you is because you're more of a writer or a poet, or, you know what I mean? It's like we have to get really, really truthful with ourselves about what do we do that, number one, lights us up, and that we could do all day long, every day, didn't care if we were paid for it or not. And sometimes a really good place to start with that is, what do people tell you you're really good about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what are those questions people ask you about constantly over and over and over again?
Yeah.
I just want to kick back to, I love this. I just want to but here we go, down the miner's cave we go. I go back to when you said you see a public speaker and you go, oh, I wish I had that. And then you said, oh, maybe you're a poet, or maybe you write. And that is a great one for comparing, because that is about seeing the form it is in your world.
Yeah, well done. Absolutely.
And the moment you can recognize that form and go, okay, well, they see they're a public speaker on stage, I write.
Yes.
And that's me and that's my form.
Yep.
And then that just shifts in your mind. So it just settles down that emotion of, oh, they've got something significant and I don't, I'm not worthy of that or anything. So step one is just seeing that form that it's in, that you do, and you don't minimize yourself anymore with that.
Right.
I think that's
I think that's really, really important to have that awareness. I think, and it's really funny because I hear you in my head saying, calm your farm.
Yeah, I nearly said calm your farm. I'm like, hang on, my cousin Ben's not getting in here again.
The reason I'm saying that, though, is that if you have things that you do that you think are your talent, or that you want to be your talent, and yet it creates chaos, or it creates stress, or it creates overwhelm or anxiety, that's not it. and so that's where are you most confident?
Yeah.
And like I say, follow what people have said to you. You know, people have said to me before, so I do a lot of guided meditations, which are available on Insight Timer. So there are many people for years prior to me deciding to do that used to say to me, you know, Moira, gosh, it doesn't matter what you say. I could just listen to your voice all day long and it keeps me calm and present. So
I know the moment I get on the call with you is that even you just go, how's your day? Or do you have a night? And I just go,
yeah. And so that's it, right? Is that for me to confidently share my gifts of healing with my voice, I show up and speak, or I do recordings, or I lead guided meditations, group guided meditations. So that's the thing too. And it lights me up. I'm not in my head. I think that's another piece of this, right? Is I'm not in my head when I'm doing that. I'm just sharing. And that bolsters your confidence, right?
Well, even our podcast, like literally before we hit play, I found the title. And Moira hadn't looked at the title this morning, you know, of what we're doing.
We
and
literally discover them right before we play.
Yeah, we go,
record.
Okay,
yeah.
Who's introing? That's like, you go, oh, that's a goodie. Who's introing? And then so, you know, 30 seconds later, we're in.
Yep.
And I think how to confidently share your talents. You know, you talked before about what do you talk about with ease? You know, what do people ask you the questions about? You know, we talked about that. If you were to, you know, you talked about being a public speaker. If you were to put your conversation in front of 5-year-olds, okay, apart from sex and jokes, if you were to have a conversation, what would you would talk about confidently in front of 5-year-olds? If they actually understood what you're talking about. Like if you talked about spanners and how to change this or how to change the oil in the car, and you confidently spoke that with ease to 5-year-olds, and you didn't compare yourself to those 5-year-olds, that's part of your talent. That are the things that you can confidently share. And because at 5-year-olds, we don't compare ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you're speaking in a public forum, you go, oh, that person there in the front, she's a famous speaker. I don't want to speak in front of her. And every time you zone in on her, you forget what you're saying. But if you see that audience as a bunch of 5-year-olds and you're not comparing, you can confidently speak about anything because they're not going to go, oh, she's wrong. She's not wrong. 5-year-olds just love to talk, or most of them, and ask questions. But it is that, you know, what do people, what do you talk about with ease? And it is with ease. You don't have to think about it. And I think
it's the ease that creates the confidence, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not an uphill battle.
No, and it's not, you're not worried about what people are going to ask, the questions they're going to ask, because you're like, oh, I can answer anything. And you don't even think about, oh, I'm going to do this talk and open up to Q&A, because if you know what you're talking about, you know you can answer anything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so this is one of the things about my own practice, and I know you have a practice like this too, Deb, is that it's so important to just come into your own energy bubble, just nothing else, just even if it's just hand over your heart and take some deep breaths, or do a meditation, whether that's a guided meditation or just a self-guided one. But that is what creates the foundational piece to be able to be the observed and the observer, because confidently sharing your talents, sometimes it takes a wee bit of a detective work to say, so what am I good at? Where do I lose all concept of time? right?
Yeah, that's a great one, concept of time.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
you know there's friends that you talk to that you just go, blah, 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 blah. And next thing
Yeah.
you know, 2 hours has gone by and you're like, God, we've been talking on the phone for 2 hours, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and you just forget. You don't
Yes.
forget. But then there's others that you can talk to for 3 minutes and you're like, oh my
And
God,
you're
I've got to
like,
get
are we
off.
done yet?
I've got to get off this call. I've got to get off this call. I've got to get off this call. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. But when we think about how to confidently share your talents, there is going to be different people that you share stuff with.
Yes.
And whether that's your social influence, whether it's strangers, whether it's family, your clients, your customers, you know, wherever, there's going to be different things that you do talk about. And you'll find if you've got something to say and people don't, if people don't hear you, that you think, you're going to find someone else that's going to listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
If your intention is to get ABC across to a partner, mm-hmm. and they don't hear you, you're going to find another stranger, or you're going to find someone else who's going to listen to that ABC. Yeah. And when you do that, recognize that. Don't mm-hmm. just go, oh, my partner's not going to listen to me about that. Just know that your partner isn't in the zone at that moment, or they're not interested in hearing anything about that. So that's okay. Find somebody else who's interested in those topics or subjects.
Because we're that thing. Yeah. And actually, it's a really good point that you bring up there, because in that kind of scenario, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your partner or with you.
Or with you, even, or whatever you're talking about. It's just,
So, you know, the other thing too, when we are confidently sharing our talents, we have to understand that we're not here to vibe with everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's by confidently sharing our talents, then we get to connect with the people who are ready to hear that or receive that or have the conversation. An example of it came to me when you were just talking about the conversation between partners. I was thinking, as a hypnotherapist, many years ago, I would work a lot with people giving up smoking. And so I had this package. People would come and they'd have 3 sessions a week apart for quitting smoking. And then I started using tapping, EFT tapping, emotion freedom technique. And I was using them both together and getting really, really awesome results with clients very easily giving up smoking. And then I started to second guess myself, because there were some people that were not open to this weird tapping thing. But then they wanted the results that they saw that I was getting with that whole approach.
Oops. Yep.
And so why I'm bringing that up was I then realized, if you want to come to have me help you quit smoking, it's to have the hypnosis and the tapping. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't resonate with you, then you need to go and find somebody else, because that's the better way.
Well, that's the package you put together because it works. Yeah. I love the way you said you second guessed yourself. Yeah. So something came in and you second guessed yourself, and until you recognize what it is. And it's that second guessing that breaks our confidentiality. Mm-hmm. Our confidentiality.
It can break that too.
Yeah, it does. And I think, when I think about how to confidently share your talents, the word confidently doesn't mean how to arrogantly share your talents. I was replacing that word confidently before, and I was going arrogantly, a-holeness, how to dictate, project, you need to do this. That's not what I'm talking about confidently. I want to make sure that, I'm sure people know that, but just ensure that how to confidently means it's you are certain about who you are. You are certain about your knowledge and what you're sharing. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if people hear it or they don't hear it.
Yeah.
But it's also how you deliver it. And that is the big key, because there is a pandemic going on, which we know, mm-hmm. and it is just so crazy the way people are dictating. People on social media, I'm going social media, friends, family are dictating, you need to do this, you should do this, da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, you're not confidently sharing your talents there.
Yeah.
You're actually dictating, you're projecting, and you know what, when somebody points a finger at you, goes, you need to do this, you should do this,
pointing back at you.
Yeah, definitely. And you just want to run. You're just like, yeah, nah, I'm going to, you shouldn't buy that. Well, I really like it. I'm going to buy it. No, it's not going to be right for you. And you're like, I think I'm just going to buy it just because you said I shouldn't. Actually, it's a bit of that, Deborah. But this is a difference between confidently sharing your talents and speaking from the heart and genuine and authentic, and not being, I'm going to say not being an a-hole.
Or not having an agenda.
Yes.
Right?
That's it. Yeah.
Because it's just that agenda that gets then that dictatorial, putting on a trip on somebody else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important, because when you do have that agenda, people notice it, and it's how you speak, and it's the energy you give out. You need to do this. You get, very happy puppy that's just jumping all around. That's great. But we want to make sure that that happy puppy can actually read other people's energy as well. So read the room. Maybe that's probably summing it up.
Yeah, but sort of feel into your own energy and feel the energy around you, right?
Yeah.
Because
totally.
What you're projecting, you're going to see around you also.
Yeah. And if you're having a bad day, now's the time not to get others to do things for you. Because if you're having a bad day, you possibly need to take some little bit of time out on your own and just internally dialogue and reflect and get your body and mind in order. So if you're a 10, don't go telling people to do stuff. Get yourself at least above the 5 before you can, possibly a 3, before actually you ask people to do things.
A quick wee message before we get back to this episode. You can get access to a special gift Moira and Debz have put together for you. Go to deliciouslymotivatedmindset.com/gift. When you sign up, you'll receive instant access to an inner peace kit and the 30 Days of Wisdom program, both of which is intended to help you feel deliciously motivated right away. Go to deliciouslymotivatedmindset.com/gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Or before you ask people to do things, or before you kind of walk in saying, here, I've got the solution, or this is how right? Because again, that's your energy.
I remember when I worked for the district health board, and I was the CEO's PA, and I came in and there was so many in my mind faults that I could see. I could change this. And in that first week, I don't know how many I changed. And then coming into the second week, I had a lot more ideas. Like I was changing 2 or 3 things a day for all the admin team and people around, that the CEO pulled me aside and said, no.
Steady on.
No. And he implemented 1 change a month. I was like, 1 change a month? He's like, 1 change a month. You cannot come in and just rip everybody's, systems to pieces because you think you know. And I was like, 1 change a month, but I've got a lot. And he said, well, you're going to have to prioritize. Right. And I remember thinking, I don't like you. I don't want to work with you anymore. But it's actually, and yes, it just allowed me to go, okay, I've got 12 months of change here. What am I going to do that's really important that I can do? Maybe I can go and ask people what they want instead of me coming in and dictating. But I definitely came in with that agenda. And I learned a lot from that.
Absolutely. That's a really good way of turning it around and actually really seeing what's needed. And that's going back to what I was saying, is your approach is not going to click with everybody.
Absolutely. Well, apparently it didn't, because he had quite a few resignations and complaints about me. Yep. We can't work under her. What? I'm a nice person. No, I wasn't. But I never read the room. I never took the time to go and say, what's working, what isn't? What do you think we could change? I just came in and went, magic wand, Deborah, sprinkle her stuff and everything's just going to change and be perfect the way I want it. No. You've got people who've worked there for 20 odd years.
But that probably ultimately did help you share your gifts with confidence.
Yeah.
You just have to go through that first.
Yeah. Well, it definitely got me to look at how I project as in a conversation, how I dictate, how to confidently share my talents. Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say talents are?
Well, I was kind of using that interchangeably with gift and talents. It's what are you good at? Sometimes you're good at things that you don't necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
So really that's what brings about that confidence boost is look at all of the strengths, all the things that you're good at, and then what do you want to do? Right?
Yeah.
And do more of that.
So I think the key is what do you want more to do of? Like what are those things that you love doing and want to do more of? But know that your talents, you have a crutch of talents, like you have the standard talents, but they do evolve and they change. So
yes,
for
because
me,
of what you focus upon.
Yeah. And so you, Moira, you've always been, if I was to label you a healer, if I was to say you're a healer, you've always had that in one form or another. You were in an office and you also did that. You resolved people's problems back then.
Yep.
So the crutch is still there, and that has been your talent that you've now been able to build and monetize. And
it's like refining it, isn't it? Because that's what you've done too.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I was a PA and then did a bit of events, then an EA, whatever. Well, actually started as receptionist, and that's always been a healer in a form.
Truly.
Problem solving, resolution, right back there, answer the phone and deal with their issue and smooth them down, calm their farm. Yeah. So the talent's been through all the way. It's just shifted into a different form. And I think this is how you can find what's your purpose, and then you look at what is this stuff, and then you go, how can I monetize it? But also how can I actually build on it and it be more fulfilling? Yeah.
How can I make this to be my signature
viable,
or be of service with it? But you're quite right that it's a common thread that's probably even from childhood. And it shows up in different flavors and different nuances, and then it becomes more and more ingrained, which is why we get to places like we were just talking about losing all concept of time and saying, hey, I could do this all day, every day. That's when you are in that zone.
Absolutely. I was just thinking at the weekend we were out of town, and there was a traffic jam in the car parking lot, and everyone was tooting and all this craziness, and we're coming up to Christmas, and I'm like, oh God, I'll just whip up here and be an a-hole in my Range Rover. And I'm like, no, don't. And as we slowly moved around, I realized there was a woman in a what do you call them? Do you call them handicap parking? What do you call them nowadays?
That's what you hear,
in the wheelchair access parking. So this woman was in there, and she was standing by a car, an older woman. And when I say older, probably 80 or so. And then there was another woman who had blocked her in, and she was shouting, and I could hear it. So I wound the window down. I couldn't quite hear what she was saying, and she was shouting, and then her fist came up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman's having a go at this woman. And all these cars and big trucks, big utes and everything are driving past, and I'm like, oh, I need to pull over here. I need to jump out and just see what's going on. So I jumped out, and my partner said, you can't park here. No one's going to get past. I said, I can. And they will if they want past. Jumped out at the hazard lights, jumped out, and I said, is everybody okay? And the woman who was in the park said, yes, she's just having an emotional time. It's okay. She's going to be okay. And I said to her, are you okay? And she says, no, I'm really angry. I said, can I do anything?
Right.
And she swore at me. She cursed and swore at me. And I said, okay. I said, all right. And I just sort of smiled. I didn't say okay in my head. I'm going to get hit by an 80-year-old here. This woman because she was about another 80-year-old having a go at this other woman.
I see.
And anyway, she backed away and parked her car. And I said to the lady, time for you to get back into your car and lock your doors and go home and get yourself a nice cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit was what I was thinking. And she goes, oh, it's nearly lunchtime. I'm having a wine. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. Right. So I waited till she backed away and drove off. And I got back in my car and my partner said, you know what? You just have such a big heart. Anything could have happened to you right there and then. You blocked your car that somebody could have come around the corner and hit. Somebody could have smacked you or anything, and you're like, no, there's two people in need here. I'm just going to stop my world, even though we're running late for something. I'm going to stop my world and resolve that.
Right.
And and I had a little laugh with the woman, and it was just so different. And she goes, "You do that so much." I'm like, "No, I don't." Instantly, no, I don't. And then we started recognizing how much I do help people in these little things that make someone's day. You smile at someone and you do all this. And she goes, "You're such a problem solver."
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. So this is exactly the example of how to confidently share my talents. Yep. I had no fear. I had no fear that the 80-year-old was going to hit me. Although at one stage I did. So then she raised her voice and swore at me. And I'm like, oh, didn't think 80-year-olds use language like that in my mind. But it was just an exact example of confidently sharing my talents, of being a problem solver and having no worry about what repercussions are going to come my way.
Nor waiting in there with an agenda.
No.
It was to, how can I
and
help?
I didn't go, who's right, who's wrong. I didn't do any of that. I just went, are we all okay? Like, are we all okay here? Can I help in any way? Just, I wasn't going to take sides. I didn't even know whose side. And if I got the woman in the park or the other woman, they both would have said, one said black, one would have said white. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to do any of that. I just want to check in if they're both emotionally okay. But I think that's the thing, is just like you're saying, no agenda, no fear, and you just speak freely and confidently.
And come from your heart.
With ease.
Which is what you just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd love people to share those things that they do, that they, share their talents and let us know what they do, confidently.
And are they aware? Are you aware of what is yours?
Well, I would not have thought about that. I would not have thought about that until my partner said, "You do that quite a bit." And I'm like, "No, I don't." Instant reaction, "No, I don't." Like, let's just downplay this. And then I'm like, actually.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I said at the beginning of our conversation to ask people.
Absolutely. And what makes you talk with ease? Yeah.
And how do people feel around you when you are in your flow?
Right. That's a great one, because you can, we were running late. I could have left my partner in a, come on, would you just hurry up?
Yeah.
But there was none of that. That was more like, oh, that's Deborah doing her thing.
Right.
It's Deborah just going to save the world again. She puts a cape on and skips off, parks her car. Worst case scenario, she gets clocked by an 80-year-old. Yeah, I was quite surprised at the 80-year-old's language. Do 80-year-olds swear? This woman,
I believe they do.
I believe they do too. So know that pattern has always been in my world.
Yes.
Was part of the other thing. And I did it with ease, with nothing. So that's definitely a way. But when we talk about confidently, it's a certainty that you have.
Yes. And that's when you get into the flow. You don't, and you're not in your head, you're not comparing yourself, you're not wondering, am I doing it the right way? Am I using the right words? Am I, you know what I mean? It's like, no, it's just flowing.
Well, that's like when I used to introduce a speaker and I had to do it verbatim. They gave me an A4 piece of paper that you had to do verbatim, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get this. There's no way I can remember the first 4 lines, but that's about it. Like, nah, it's not going to work. And when I think about that, I think about that problem there. That's because I was putting someone else's words in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So the moment you dictate somebody else's words, like if your story is your story. Tell your story.
Your way of expressing it is totally different. Yeah. I once was interviewed in it like that, and it had to be scripted, and it was scripted by me and submitted, but then I was supposed to stick to that script, and it was like, it has to be the worst interview ever. I hope it's deleted. I hope it's deleted now.
I'm going to go searching it. It is like that, because when you have to say certain things, like I do my my Facebook lives every Friday morning. Actually, that'll be your Thursday night. I just have like three or four bullet points that I put on my post-it note. Like they're the things that I just want to make sure I get across. Like these are the key things. And it's not a big, massive paper that I've got to talk about, but when I'm scripted, it's really hard.
Yeah.
As you'll be able to tell from us here on this podcast.
No, and that's the same thing on my Facebook Lives, Monday, your Tuesday. That I'm using cards and it's like they're being picked right there, and it's whatever. So I had no idea what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
I know I'm going to talk about 10 minutes, but that's it.
Yeah, for me that feels comfortable. I mean, you definitely know what you're going to say. You know, but they do say when you do TED Talks, you got to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. Like I'd change it every time.
Yeah, me too. So guess we'll never get there.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go.
You just have to listen to our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. But then when we go how to confidently share your talents, know that your partner or family members or children don't have to be like you. And I know as a parent to a 21-year-old, there was, my daughter played sport. There was quite a few parents who were ex-New Zealand reps or, elite performers, and they were determined to get their children into that. And it's like, just because you played this sport doesn't mean your child has to play this sport. Oh yeah, it does, because I know this and I can coach this. And it's like, okay, righto. And I think for me, I did play water polo at a higher level, and my daughter played water polo. Yes, absolutely. But for me, I edged her into water polo over hockey because it was an indoor. It was all round all year. Right. It was indoor. And it was so much warmer than hockey outside. So definitely, I'm going to say.
So there was a wee agenda there.
Yeah, there was definitely an agenda in there as a spectator. But don't expect your children to go into the same thing that you've done, and have a trust and faith that their coaches or their teachers or whatever are going to look after them.
Well, that's actually speak to allowing them to find their talent in their way, right? Very important, because you don't want to be a have to. It's going to be a I choose to.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah,
I'd love to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be research. You're going to try different things on for size. How do I feel? Does this resonate? Does this light me up?
Yeah, we've got a top athlete, Richie McCaw, who's one of our All Blacks, ex-All Black, and he married Gemma McCaw now, and she's a New Zealand hockey player, and everyone's like, oh, those kids are going to be elite athletes. And it's like, right. And now they've got two girls, and they're like, what sport they're going to play? And I just read that stuff on social media, and I just go, well, maybe they might actually be creative in another form. It's really interesting. And definitely they're going to have fitness. These two kids are going to have fitness in there because the parents are running every day and doing that, but to a level when they don't want to do it and they'll do something else. But I think that's that thing of comparing, just knowing that your talents may not be the same as your children.
Yeah, because it's not handed to you. It comes from within you, right?
Absolutely.
So that's it. And then so like as we're coming in to wrap this up, what would you say? What I'm trying to think of is this idea that we said it's the thread that's followed all the way through. How would you encourage people to acknowledge or to be introspective, to figure that out, or just to feel into that? Is there a tip that you have?
To find their talent, or to
find the thread of it, not necessarily.
Well, listen specific to the questions that people ask them. What's their conversations that glitter bomb them? Shoulders back, where they just talk and their hours disappear.
Yeah, give them a sense of excitement.
What lights you up? What is that stuff? Because that's part of your talents. And if you have 3 conversations over 3 days, and they're different conversations, then go, what's the
common
form
thread
of that?
Yeah. And what's the common thread?
Yeah. And it may be just talking to people in person. Maybe that. But what's the bigger thing? I would say that. I love the no agenda part.
I think that's really important. Really, really important.
What would you say?
I would say
Same.
the same.
Yeah.
To look at the synchronicities, the coincidences, the things that are like, oh look, it's there. It's just in a different form, but it's actually all the same thing.
Well, me
And
in the car park, I would not have picked that up. I would not.
Right.
I just saw someone in, and I come from an ex-security background,
Mhm.
with my family. So I just went into, oh, this woman's in need.
Right.
I better get in there and find out what it is.
Be of service.
Yeah, but not thinking about it. So, and it wasn't until afterwards. It's like, you do that all the time. I'm like, no, don't. Then you're like, actually, I do. That's my business.
But that's the
As
point of
problem
it. We don't
solving.
necessarily see it. So that's why it's best to hear it or to notice it from feedback from other people. Awesome. How to confidently share your talent.
Yeah.
Awesome conversation, my dear.
Oh,
So
yes.
to wrap this up, dear listeners and dear Deb, we're going to do our little check-in again on that scale of 0 to 10.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that one.
0 to 10, where would I be?
You were a
I feel like
2.5 to start.
I won't say 0 because I've clearly got a lot more in my mind to talk about. So I'm going to say a 1.
Okay, but you haven't coughed, so that's a pretty cool thing.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say 1. Yeah, 1. And you?
I'm going to put myself at 0.5 because I was 1. Just little pieces in there, that's all.
Do you know, I just have to say, I actually, in my head, I went, I'm a 0.5. And what came out my mouth was a 1. And I went, oh, that's interesting that your mind's thinking differently to your soul. And then you go, I'm a 0.5. And I'm like, okay, of course. That's,
of course.
of course. So,
of course.
Perfect. So, yes. Let us know, listeners.
Definitely. Awesome conversation. All right, dear listeners, we will catch you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.